Manager, do you want to start things off, or do you want to top flow start?
Good evening. It's good to be back. I think it's been a while. Those of you who did see me a year or so ago, lots changed in the community, the organization. This group, or members of this group, when they first started coming to me asking about maintenance of landscaping and landscape districts from various management benefit districts. So you pay assessments into the city, we maintain properties or have a contractor do that. And there's just a lot of questions. And I will tell you, due to the continuing questioning from a number of folks in your neighborhoods, they kept asking and asking questions, and it was something that they were very legitimate questions. And we weren't providing good answers. In some cases, we weren't providing answers. And that all kind of stemmed from early conversation with you. So since that time, had a lot of changes in the organization. About 9 of the leadership team are different from the 10 when I started 18 months ago. You've been paying attention. We've had transformation going on in the organization, a lot of changes. I believe it's for good. It's to be more accountable, more transparency, to deal with a lot of issues that were not done well in the city in the past. Let's just be candidly straight here. Making some headway there, have a long ways to go yet. One of the things we wanted to come back to you is that there were a lot of questions about were your funds you pay in your assessment districts being appropriately, with transactions appropriate, getting what you paid for. And it wasn't only you guys when we first started looking at it, but you raised it to me. It turned out to be almost all the districts had issues here. And that means neighborhoods throughout the entire community. There were questions were left unanswered just from, I'll say, some poor financial management, poor record keeping. I can keep going on, but we're here to talk about the steps we've now taken to look at all the districts and try to right this wrong from the past. And so tonight we hired a consulting firm, to look at all our districts. And I guess I'm just going to give you my non-engineering, only city manager, so I'm an expert in nothing. I just have learned a lot in 20-some years of being city manager, that we have to give you a benefit for the assessment of what we maintain for you or have a contractor do for you. And if those two don't match up, then we're charging you too much, or we're going to talk to you about whether or not we raise that assessment. I'll tell you right now, I think we have a good story tonight at the end of this. But it has to be right. It has to have a basis for that. So we actually have to have what's called an engineering study. It says this is the benefit you're receiving, this is the cost of that, here's your assessment. They have to match. You can't collectively more than it costs to maintain the properties. So we went through this process, and Pablo is here with us tonight. He's kind of going to go through that for you because it impacts you as assessment district owners. Kind of give you, this is where we're at. These are some things we still have to do to make right what I think has been not well managed in the past for all of you. And we actually have to go to pretty well every neighborhood throughout the community and have a similar conversation. Everybody different. You have different costs due to different landscape maintenances, different levies. So we've got to go through that one by one. We pretty much got through a lot of the assessment analysis on where we are going forward, but there are some questions were asked today by some of your leadership that we still don't have answers to. Questioning utilities, are they being charged appropriately? Certain sections that are the city rights of way versus property that's we'll call owned or paid for by the assessment district. A lot of questions still there that we are going to follow up, but Paul will be able to kind of give you a calendar and schedule for that. So for you, I'm sorry that we are having to go through this process of restarting kind of where we were with everybody, but it's better to do it right going forward and not continue the same way of doing business. And that way I can look you in the eyes and tell you, I know we're doing it right, here's the documentation that shows we're doing it right versus the way it was done before. And that's just the honest truth. And then we can open up later to questions or other types of concerns you have. But I want to let Pablo go first with us. So, sir, if you want to lead us off, I appreciate it. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Good evening, my name is Pablo Perez. My expertise is in assessment district, Melrose, and all these types of special taxes that you probably have a pair of. I've been doing this for about 25 years. And so I've been retained by the city to look at the way they have been administering in-house their districts. And I'm sure you have heard there's some issues with them. Tonight's presentation, you'll see slides here that are, this is sort of a template for further meetings we're going to have throughout Oxnard in the next coming months. That includes all the districts, not just West Village area, but I will concentrate on just the West Village items as much as I can. Okay. There'll be a question and answer section at the end, but if you have any questions, just ask at any time. It's a column. I'm here to help and provide you with as much information as I can. First two slides are, you've probably seen this at some council meeting. This is the effort being undertaken by the city in reviewing not just the assessment districts, but rather their organization as a whole. And this is where they're using us the blocks for a good government organization. This you may have seen as well posted, is on the website. It's posted at every council meeting. But all the items we're working on, the item we're working on is that one item, in fact, is an item inside of an item. So the words in red is what we're working on tonight. This organizational assessment started in September 2014. The first, we were retained sometime in the summer of 2015, and we made our first presentation to council in October 27, 2015. That's when we presented this very large report that in essence identified many areas of concern regarding the assessment districts, not just West Village, but rather the whole city. Okay? And so it's from that report that we have been performing various audits and looking at various documents to make sure that things are done correctly, and if not, what's wrong with it and how to fix it. Some of these efforts you can see, we have recently completed a district boundary audit. What this really means, and I'll summarize some of these for you, the boundary audit actually came out better than expected, so that's actually kind of good news. In that audit, what we're looking for is parcels that are being charged in an assessment district that actually do not belong in an assessment district or that assessment district, and vice versa. And in fact, the results of that audit were quite good. Since then, we have provided the city with an update of internal goals and policies. This is so that in the future they have a template that they can use to manage these districts and figure out how to track funds and do things the way they're supposed to be done. The city is currently reviewing that, and we hope that council will approve it and implement it in the coming months. The service levels, which is referred to the item there, establishes really a schedule that shows things like, okay, if you're in an assessment district and you're getting your grass mowed twice a week and trimmed this way or so often, you're a level A versus a level B, C, D, and E, F. So here actually define number of maintenance items and tasks that need to occur that makes those grade levels. We need these so that we can actually have a communication with both contractors, city staff that does the maintenance, and the property owners, so that we can actually explain how, what kind of service they're getting.
Pablo, sorry to interrupt you, but can you explain to them whether that A through F scale is related to like a grade, or is it just a designation? So if something's a D, does that mean it's substandard, or that's just an identification?
It's just an identification, yeah. So essentially it's really a platform for communication, so that we can actually not only gauge our efforts, but grade the way we are engaging the contracts, what we provide to the contractors that possibly could be doing the work, as well as city staff, because many of the districts are actually maintained by city staff. The next item, which we'll be talking about today, mostly is the budget audit. I'll skip explaining that in a second, I'll address in a minute, but and the item that we're currently working on, and we hope to have finished by end of February, is the levy audit. So the levy audit essentially reveals your rate. So whatever, if you look at your property tax bill, you're currently paying a certain amount for your assessment, whichever that is. Those rates are actually based on a report that was written many, many years ago when the development was first put into place. And so they have certain escalators and inflators, and there's a way to calculate that rate. What we're doing is we're rebuilding it from scratch. We're going back to the beginning, setting it all over again and making sure that the city has the correct rate, which you have been charged all these years. If there's something wrong with that, then adjustments will be made. And so we're currently working on that. The audit that we recently completed is the budget audit, and that's what we'll focus on tonight. There's quite a bit of findings there, so we'll cover that next. In order to do this kind of work, these are some of the items that we have been reviewing. An engineer's report, so I just want to make sure everybody understands, when you have an assessment district form, each assessment district everywhere in the state will always have an engineer's report. It is required by law. This report actually details not only what improvements are authorized to be provided, paid for by the assessment, but also sets the rate, the boundary, and everything we need to know about an assessment district should be found in that report. So there's an original report, and there's supposed to be an annual update every year. The annual updates are generally just not, they're administrative, not much changes from year to year. But at a minimum, you should be familiar with these reports, and if you ever have any questions, that's what we all go to. We start with the report and go from there. So it details exactly what you're paying for. So we have to review those, and we have to find what items were authorized. Because from district to district, you have different items authorized. You may have landscaping in this district, but not on the next district. Maybe you have sidewalks on this one and not on the next district. You may have mailboxes, as we found out today, in some districts, but not all districts. That means that though you may have a mailbox that needs to be repaired, it's not authorized to be repaired by assessment district funds. So it's very important that you go back to these documents and make a list of that and figure out what's authorized or not. Furthermore, it's also even important that you provide the contractor who's doing the work with that list, so that they actually do the work that you're paying for. Does that make sense? We have looked at the city maintenance activities because the city does maintain about 22 districts, meaning your staff, it's not a contractor. We looked at the contracts. In your particular case, everything is a contract, it's the last year. We looked at the actual utility invoices. We were able to obtain a year's worth of invoices. That's approximately 3,000 water bills. So that was a lot of work to get those and to go through them. We also went through the Edison bills. They're quite complicated and not as pretty as we want them to be. But we reviewed all that. We looked at receipts, credit card statements, everything that has been paid for from an assessment district during the past years. We looked at the allocation of expenses by the city, and this means their staff doing either direct work on repairing a sprinkler, mowing the lawn, or actual administrative staff that is tracking the funds and items like that related to the districts. We looked at the way they allocated that cost and so on. The location of the utility meters to make sure they're in the right district, meaning that you're paying for your meter, not somebody else's meter, right? Because water differs from meter to meter. And then we created a new budget from what we reviewed. So that's what really was entailed as summary on this most recent audit. Okay? In essence, we rebuilt a budget from scratch based on bills and all the information that we gathered from the city. Our goal there was to build a budget that we can use for this upcoming year and to make corrections to the current year that we just had, which is we're currently on what we call 15-16. The items that you see in your property tax bill, which they're typically delinquent December 10th and April 10th. So in December 10th of 16, that item, which you get your tax bill probably around October or so, and probably goes to your mortgage company who has an income account, right? But that's when they go out. We have to submit that to the county by June, sometime in June. So that means that currently, between now and May, we have to work all this out, fix it all up, set up a new budget, new rates, and get it done in time for your next submittal. And you won't see those charges until December, well, you see in October, but you won't be until December 10th of 2016. So that's sort of the upcoming year. Any questions so far? Does anybody not understand my accent? Okay, I speak really fast. I'm from Puerto Rico, and we're always in a rush. I don't know why. I was just there for New Year's, and indeed, everybody's just crazy. And we speak very fast Spanish, by the way. I don't know if you have any Puerto Rican friends, it's not the same as Mexican Spanish or any other Spanish. Spanish think we actually kill the language, which is true. Because we don't have time to actually pronunciate anything, we just go right to it and skip it all. It's really fun. Yes.
Would you be kind enough to clarify this Did I hear you say that our water bill is based on the individual water usage per household?
No. There's actually meters for the landscaping, which is on public right away, and the medians around your neighborhoods. So those meters that the city gets billed for are related to that type of work. It's not a meter for your home. It's really for landscaping work being performed on medians and other public places.
When you get to the individual homes, I'd like to ask that, I'd like you to answer that.
We will not be getting there. I do not handle that part. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. The question she had is, if when I mentioned the water meters, if that, what they pay, what you pay on the property tax is related to your usage at your home of your water consumption. And that is no, because these are separate water meters.
But I think what she's also asking is that we've been informed that the parkway, the water in the parkway is responsibility of the city. And that the parkway, by definition, includes that area that's in front of our front yard between the sidewalk and the driveway. I think that's the question that she has. And that water is, as I understand, I'll let the city identify who thinks that.
Yeah, that's a question for staff.
Yeah, I'll let him go through his presentation on the LMDs and the easements. If anybody has an individual question on any of the utilities, water or otherwise, you can see me after the presentation and I can address that.
Findings of the audit. So this is the budget audit that we completed recently. First thing that we found, and this is what pertains to you mostly because West Village is in this first group, they were authorized improvements that were not being provided for which you're paying for. Okay, so I'll repeat that. The assessment rate that was set up at the beginning on that, in that engineer's report said you're gonna pay X dollar, right, amount. And it's gonna pay for landscaping, sidewalks, fences, mailboxes, and it goes on and on and on. Not all of the improvements were in the contract for your contractor, your landscaper. So if you're driving around and you notice that you're not getting something, there's a chance that it's not being done because somebody forgot, but rather it was never in the contract to begin with, though it was authorized. On the other hand, your rate was set at the original amount, escalated status, so in essence, you have been paying for items you have not been receiving. Okay, that's the first thing we found. The city has approximately 58 districts, 32 of them were in this category. Okay. And I'll go over what happens next. Okay, so these are just the findings, right? Utility meters. We are currently working with the city on having this review because when we map these meters, what we're looking at is we have a bill that has an address that we're trying to geolocate it right with GIS and all that. And we can see that it's an LMD 41, 42, whatever it is. Some of them may be in the borderline and we can't tell this guy. Right? And so we're having the city review some of that for us. But we certainly found meters that are obviously wrong, meaning the meter is an LMD X, but when the city has been allocating the cost of that water, it has been allocated the cost to District Y, another district. And that goes both ways. So you find meters that are being paid by this group of people that should be paid by these, and then vice versa. There are meters that are not assigned to anybody, and there are many districts that have no meter at all, even though they're getting water, right? So obviously something is missing. We didn't get all the bills or the meters, something, so we're still working on this. We have a long list for the city of reassignments so they can do the accounting correctly, and secondary to track them down physically and go, okay, that meter goes here, that meter goes there, how come this meter doesn't show up anywhere, right? So we have to do that in order to create an accurate budget. That's what's going to happen in the next few months. And we'll reallocate the water usage and create a new budget from that. The same happened with Edison. Edison has sort of a more interesting thing because we have as many bills as we got from Edison. There's a large number of districts for which we don't have a bill. Yet you have sprinklers that are running, so obviously there's power there. So we don't know where those bills are, and we don't have copies of them, and we don't know who's paying for what, correct? But that we still need to pursue. And Edison does have a few that were incorrectly placed internally, right, that we pay for the wrong end. the third bullet item here, the largest one there, the annual utility budget cap. We're not done with that part. You are so lucky that you actually happen to have 30 districts with this language that I have never seen in 25 years of doing this. It's really, really interesting. Where you have a specific escalator, an inflator annually, that is capped just for the utility part of your budget. We're confident that that has not been implemented correctly. But we have not completed that part. We've seen enough to know, okay, we need to look at all of that and recreate it from scratch. That will be covered in the levy audits that I mentioned earlier, that we're still working on. Okay? So I hope at the end of February, we'll be able to figure this one out. We again need this in order to create a new budget, right? Yeah. So we have 58 districts or so. 26 of them have deficits. And what that means is that when we recreate the budget today, right, based on what we know so far, right, after we move the meters from this one to that one, and then we made all the corrections and still some additional corrections to be had. We know that there are 26 districts for which the levy rate that has been used will not be sufficient to pay for the maintenance costs. These tend to be the original set of districts, the early numbers, which are very old, from the 80s and 90s. They did not have inflators. So imagine if you set a rate in 1986 of $30, that's what it's still today. Yet water, electricity, and landscaping has gone up. So this was not, a surprise. We expected it all along. Right? Now there are 33 districts that have surpluses. So these are districts for which the budget and the levy, they're in good shape. Again, we have not finished the budget yet, but based on what we see so far, this is good news. So here are the recommendations. Now, we found all that, what do we do with it, right? First of all, we're recommending and telling the city that they need to rebid all of the districts, in essence, including those maintained by the city. Because we want to see, remember, those maintained by the city are those that are in a deficit situation. So if we can bid that out and get a contract that is lower rate that the city is incurring, maybe they're not negative, right? Maybe we can do assessment increases or deal with that, because we can fix it by just getting a new contract for them at a lower rate than the city's currently paying their staff for. That work, right? Does that make sense? So that's what we want to do, all of them, not just the districts that already have contracts. To do that first item, we have to create new templates for the city to bid out the projects. You recall I mentioned earlier, a lot of the contracts do not include all of the authorized improvements. The reason for that is because the city has been using one template to bid all the projects. But each LMP, each district has different services. Yes, they be very similar. Maybe they all have landscaping. Maybe they all have these basic items. But when you break it out into a grid, absolutely not. You have lots of different combinations. So you have to make your bid package custom made for each one. And so we're also establishing the levels of service so that in the packet we can tell the contractors this is what we're expecting for a level A, a level B. This is how many times you have to do the work or do this and that, so that we can get different pricing, right? We want to see, many cities properties don't always want level A. Maybe level B is good enough, right? It depends on how much you pay for that, right? So it comes down to how much it costs. Next thing we want to do is have the city implement procedures that once we have these contracts all rebid and in place, there's actually a staff that is constantly checking to make sure that the work is being performed. So if that authorized improvement included sidewalks, repair, or what have you, for that entity, there needs to be somebody looking out, going out on site and making sure that the contractor is actually doing the work as they submit the invoice for payment to the city. That's what the monthly reporting and independent verification is about. In addition to that, I mentioned earlier we have these direct costs. So for any districts where the city is doing the maintenance, that's what we call a direct cost. Direct cost is a city staff actually doing maintenance work. The city is currently deploying a GIS solution. It's called REGIS. That's what the acronym on the far right is. It comes from the city of Rancho Cucamonga. They have been using the system extensively for the many assessment districts. And what it is essentially on your iPhone or any device, all their maintenance staff and their contractors, everybody in the city has one of these, and they log everything they do. So on-site, as they go repair a sprinkler or mow the lawn or what have you, they log it against the assessment district, they log the activity, they log their rate. And so at the end of the year, or monthly, at any time, we can get a report that shows how much money's been spent on each district, so that we can use that for the budget and set your rates accordingly. So the city started employing that solution, which I believe we go beta at the end of the month, if I remember correctly. So that's nice. In addition to that, we have to track the indirect costs. Now, these are administrative staff. So far I mentioned fund balances and accounting. All that stuff happens behind the scenes. So there's a lot of staff at the city that is tracking these numbers on a monthly basis, paying invoices. I mentioned 3,000 water invoices in a year. Somebody has to pay those. So that cost is allocated or segmented from their salary and the loaded cost and applied to the assessment districts. For that, we have to use a formula that is different from using the Reaches tool, because that's not actually maintenance work, but rather how much time they more or less spend on the districts doing this accounting work, right? So a portion of that is applied to all the LMDs who pay for that staff. Again, this is all going to happen in the next coming months in time for the 2016-17 new year. So we can create that new budget. The next item really doesn't apply to you, except maybe to the lady in the back. As I look at your districts, and I'll show you a table, a couple of slides here, I currently do not foresee that you will need to go to an assessment increase for any of your districts, because in West Village, we have the opposite scenario. We have years that have been collected for authorized improvements that were not provided. So you actually have a surplus in your accounts. And even when we rebuilt the budgets, even though we're not totally done with them, they look pretty good at the moment. So I'm not anticipating this to be your story, okay? I believe the next one is your story. So we have two scenarios. We have an anticipated annual surplus based on what you're going to be charged or can be charged versus what the improvements are to be provided, including those that were authorized and not previously provided, right? So let me explain the assessment concept here. There's something we call the maximum assessment. The engineer's report sets for you a maximum assessment that's inflated every year or increased automatically. It doesn't mean that the city needs to charge that amount. The city is only supposed to charge the amount that it needs to provide the services that were authorized and you're receiving. Makes sense? So even though the rate may be, set to $500 a home, just pick a number, but the actual cost when we put in your budget is $300 a home, that is what you should see in your project tax bill. So one of the recommendations we're going to do, and since we're actually doing these for the city, is that we will most likely not bill at the full amount. Furthermore, you have so much money already in hand. Many of your accounts, or your districts have lots of money. That we probably going to be recommending a very, very small limit. Maybe like $1, $5, something to hold that in place, but we can use the money that you have there, and we don't need to levy you for additional funds because there's money sitting there. Remember, this money has been accumulated, collected from you, but not actually used for improvements, right? Another thing you can do, and there's no one option or the other, you could actually do a combination. There may be a need, and this is where I talked to Michael earlier today, maybe the properties want many of these sidewalks that have been in disrepair because they have not been for 3 years. In 1 year, fix them all up, right? Well, that's going to cost a little more than it would over time because you do it in 1 year. We can use part of the surplus to repair the sidewalks or the mailboxes or whatever you may need. All your trees, get them all up to speed on whatever it is that you need. And so this is where we're going to depend on Michael for some input as your representative to know and recommend to the city, okay, what do the property owners desire to do with this money in addition to just having reduced levies in the future. So I think for West Village, this is a great meeting. I mean, ultimately at the end, yes, the past is not pretty, but I can tell you the future should be looking very good for you. That will not be the case in my other meetings, unfortunately. So let's see how we get there, right? And again, we'll continue to have property owner outreach. Michael has been in great communication with the city staff as well as NBS. I think we have a really good relationship going, and Phil as well. So we're able to communicate, pass on whatever you need, and we're always here to help you and figure out how to do this and fix it. So that's what we're doing. We'll continue to come out and present to you as many times as needed, okay? So let me show you some of the things we found in more detail now. On the top, these are your districts, 31, 36, 38, 39, 42, 26, 51. The items that were authorized in that engineer's report that has been provided for years, and I'll make a note here, okay? The fact that it has been provided doesn't mean that it has been provided to your satisfaction, okay? That's a different story, right? Okay, so it has been provided in the sense that it's included in the contract that the contractor is supposed to be doing, right? Okay, so the city has contracted somebody to do this work, landscaping, trees, all that stuff you see on the top, for years. The city has not put in a contract the items you see below. These items below will obviously result in an overlay, an overcharge, and the accumulation of surplus, because you have never been provided those services and nobody has ever really charged the city for those services, but you have been charged for those. So these are the items that you're going to start seeing immediately beginning 16, 17. In fact, we talked about adding mailboxes to District 31, possibly others, which need some repair. Was it 31?
Just 31.
31.
Four
Yeah, so
changes.
even though it's not authorized, there's actually a mechanism through a resolution to add mailboxes to Assessment District 31 and use the assessment for that. That can be done. In fact, you can add any improvement which is authorized under the Act as long as you do not increase the assessment amount. So as long as the assessment is able to pay for it and is authorized under the Act, then we can add it. I think I covered most of the top. I want to show you, I covered the meter discrepancies that we're still working on. We solved many of them, we still have more to work on. What I want to show you is what today looks like your preliminary revised budget. And I say preliminary because remember, the items that were authorized and not provided, which we're still getting an estimate from the city on what that may cost, that's going to be added to that. There are meters that are moving a little bit here and there, and Edison bills that we have not found. So that may change a little bit. But if you look at the 15-16 levy, for example, District 31, the levy rate was set at 72. Now, assuming that the levy audit doesn't change that much, we're still working on that, and assuming that 72 is still a good number, the budget we see is somewhere close to that, right? So 31 should be at least even or maybe a minor surplus. And what I mean by this is in future years. This is what annually happens, right? Notice the other districts though, they're in very good shape. This is not your surplus that you have in the account. This is projected annual surpluses that will occur if we maintain the assessment at the full rate and your budget as you see here. Okay? Again, we don't have to charge the full amount either. So this is just for us as consultants, we want to see what the maximum assessment is versus your budget. That's what we're looking at. Next step, city will verify the utility meters. We're waiting on those estimates of what the additional improvements are. These are the ones authorized and not provided. We have to resolve that 5% utility cap to figure out where the rate should be or not be. And then we need to identify the additional authorized improvements, which we did. It's on the previous table. Create a replacement plan if there's anything that needs to be replaced out there. Sometimes you have types of capital improvements, maybe landscaping. I think a replacement plan for you may be something about the trees. I hear that you love those trees and you like to get rid of them. So that will fall under that, and there's money to do that. By the way, I do not like those trees. They're horrible in your car, I can tell you that. I drove by the neighborhood. It's a beautiful neighborhood, by the way. But the trees, I was really concerned. All the sidewalks like that, yeah.
They're more like side steps than sidewalks now.
Well, that's how it works. I mentioned credit levies, and this is, since we don't need all that annual maximum assessment, we can actually set the rate much lower. Not only that, you also have surplus funds, so there's no reason really to even set the rate at all. But a placeholder is what I always recommend my clients, something like $1, $5, something to keep the charge there. Why? What happens is, if we don't have the charge in the tax bill, people forget that it was supposed to be there to begin with. And one day in the future, we're going to increase that up again to where it used to be, more or less. And I like to avoid those phone calls because people forget. And they go, oh my God, what happened? I have to explain. So having a little placeholder, I think is a great idea. Property owner refunds, that's also a possibility. That's something we'll need to discuss with, both Michael and city staff and figure out, okay, is that a better option or what have you? And continue to do community outreach and have these meetings with you. We're working on the levy audits. I'm really, really interested in seeing the results of this. I already know the escalator on the 5% utility is wrong, and there's a few other things, but that's key, and we want to finish that as soon as possible. We're working on it. In fact, we're scheduled to provide a status report to council, is it March 29th? I believe. Yeah. So at that point, we will have the levy audit completed, and we'll be able to completely present on it and see what we found. And major recommendation that we're making to the city. In fact, the city, I sent them a job description of the type of financial analysts we hire at our company, and also other clients that I have staff dedicated to administer these districts in-house. Meaning, even if you use a consultant, you have 60 or so districts. That's a lot of work. It really is. Think about 3,000 invoices coming through. The city needs to have a dedicated staff member, somebody usually titled special district manager, special district administrator. Many cities call them assessment district administrator. But this person, even with a consultant or without, has to track all the billing, make sure everything's done correctly, make sure the staff is checking on the contractors. So this is a position that the city will be fulfilling, and I'm hoping the sooner the better, so that we can pass on all our knowledge and everything we found and have them set up, so that this doesn't happen again in the future. I mean, I think that's very, very important. Because without that responsible main person, this can occur again. So these things will happen. It's just how it goes, right? Somebody has to be in charge. I think that's it for my presentation, and now I'll take the questions. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, did you mention, did you mention that you're going to be handling the administration?
For this year, yeah. So I'm under contract through January of 2017. So currently, we're fixing, everything used to be there. We're going to track it down, with the city staff fix it, creating budgets, get it on the tax roll, and work on even prior year, because, we talked a lot today about the current year, but there's stuff in the past that we need to review as well, and changes that need to be made. We'll do that, and we'll work with the city staff on that, but we actually want a city staff member doing that with us, so that we are passing that knowledge and that we're creating templates and spreadsheets that city staff can actually in the future track on their own. Because at some point or another, I'm gonna start going to class. I know you're gonna miss me. But it's a long drive from Temecula, I can tell you that. It's okay, I'll do it for a few times. Yes, sir.
Last night, the board of City Council tentatively approved a 60% increase in water rates. How does that fit with the 5% cap on utilities?
That's very interesting. I do not know yet. We are gonna look at that in the levy audit. That creates a problem. Like I said, I have never seen this. Tiffany, we've never seen it before, right? It was very, very innovative, but not a very good language. So it caps the amount that you can increase the assessment and the budget for the utility aspect only, which is, I guess from a property owner standpoint, it's a good thing, right? Because that's what's going to increase the most. But it really handicaps the city in providing these improvements, because it is water and Edison that goes up the most. In fact, if you look at your actual districts, the water, now you have a drought, but in the past, that was horrible. You have some large water usage. You have your contractors, but really that's not your main cost. To be honest, it's just water. So it's really going to create a problem in the future. For West Village, again, you have piles of money, right? For good or bad, you didn't get the improvements that you were paying for, but that sort of puts you in a different situation. This is going to be a major issue for the over 20 soil districts that are in a deficit. This will really be a problem for them. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see. But only if that language is in there, and then we're going to see what the inflator is. So this is sort of, we don't know yet how that's going to play out. Yes.
You talk about our huge deficits, but if somebody comes in and fixes our sidewalks, that's going to wipe out all the money we have. Every sidewalk in the communities are wrecked. The other thing is, on the sheet you gave us of that they maintain trees, it's in the contract.
Right.
But they trim the trees occasionally, but they don't trim the roots that are lifting the sidewalks. So if you replace the sidewalks and nobody trims the roots of the trees in 5 years, we're gonna have to pay again.
I agree. So there are two issues, two questions here.
Right, and my third is there anything in there about the fences?
Yes,
Because
okay.
it's a disaster.
Okay, so the first one is your surplus and repairing these sidewalks. Indeed, yes, you can have a large amount of money, and sidewalk repair may wipe that out, right? I'm not suggesting that you spend all of your money on sidewalk repair. I'm just saying that that's a possibility. I think through Michael and these meetings, you'll be able to communicate and express to the city what your desire is. This is ultimately your money. If the city cannot use any of these funds for anything else, they're really, if you're in LMD 31, only in LMD 31, and so on and so on. It cannot be used for anything else, so until you tell the city how to use it, it's just gonna stay there, right? What's your second question, I'm sorry?
About the roots.
Oh, the roots, okay. Tree maintenance, tree trimming. Yes, it has been in the contract. You have been paying for it, and I've heard a lot about it, and not in a good way. So my understanding is that maybe the contractor, and I would say maybe, that's pretty good fact, so you can see it, has not been holding their side of the bargain, right? They're on the contract to do the trimming, and apparently it's not happening. So that's what this new position is gonna make sure of, that happens. In fact, the city is currently asking for more detail on their invoices and a description of what they do.
But I mean, not to press the issue,
Uh-huh.
but when they trim my trees, and I say to them, there's a root that's lifting my sidewalk, will you cut that? They say, that's not our job, that's the city, talk to the city. So I just want to, if you're talking about this, maybe that needs to be clarified.
Do you want to check on that when we do the contracts to make sure I don't know if that's possible for them to work with the roots?
Yes, we will.
And then you have one last.
Oh,
The fences, yes. The fences were recently added. You can see it's a little, yeah, you have it there, numbered, bullet point, put it on number 2 on that second table. Fences were not, were authorized, but not being provided for many, many years. They showed up as an addendum to the standard bidding package in February of 2015, if I recall correctly. So I believe now you're seeing some fence activity, right? Some repairs and things.
We're told.
But they were imagine the fences were just like the sidewalks and everything at the bottom. You had no fence repair whatsoever because they were not in the contract, so. But they're there now. In fact, they're part of your standard template now.
Going back to the sidewalks, it's my understanding that the parkways and the sidewalks belong to the city. So why would we be repairing the sidewalks?
It's, so is every public right of way. So if you look at the landscaping on the median, that you're paying for, everything you're paying for here. In fact, none of this is for private property. So the sidewalks and everything is public property, right? That's what assessment districts are supposed to do. They're supposed to be formed, and they're actually, the way these work, so I don't know if you know how you all got stuff with dwellings, right? When the developer came to the city, right, and this is very standard, this is not Oxnard, this is a story that goes on forever in the state of California, right? So you can live in Puerto Rico like I did and have no improvements whatsoever, including no zoning or anything. It's totally like the Wild West over there. So forget fences and forget any of this stuff, it just doesn't exist. But you can come to a beautiful state like California, but unfortunately the state is broke. So what happens is, over the years, these two, after 1978, when we have about 13, which put a major cap on what government can charge property owners for services to fund all their operations, these became very popular. So these were in the books, 72 Act, in fact we had the 11 Act, 15 Act, but they were not very popular until after 78. And so cities started relying on these mechanisms to fund these types of improvements. And so what ends up happening is in many cities throughout California, the developer goes to the city and says, oh, I want to build these homes, and it's all nice and dandy. However, they are subject to placing certain landscaping on the median, they have to put trees, do certain things to bring it up to standard, right? Well, the city doesn't have the money to pay for that. So they use the 72 Act, which allows for that developer to sign up and say, yes, these homes will pay a maintenance fee to maintain all these improvements in the public right of way. Now, That is done, and you receive this benefit, which is an increased benefit over what other people are getting throughout the city. And so in theory, your improvements in your community that has an assessment district should be nicer and better than what other parts of the city are getting, which are not in assessment district, right? And that's how it all starts. It's your developer. The builder does this, and then you get it, and it goes on and on and on forever. And so, yes, everything you're paying for is in the public right away, and that's pretty standard. So, I hope that answers that question.
So at meetings here over the last couple of years, Mike Gleason has presented charts that he got from the city that showed what the assessment was for the district and what their balance was or should have been. I live in the first district, and we have one of the lower rates already. And we showed up as having a substantial deficit on the total. But you're showing that this coming year, there'll be a 3,000 plus surplus. Does that imply that the deficit that was shown up is not a real deficit?
It's very possible. So remember, we're rebuilding the budgets from scratch, right?
Yeah.
So based on what we see, District 31, if everything was the same as we saw it in 14-15, this 1 year window that we looked at, should have not had a deficit. But over the years, that's not how the costs were being allocated to the district. There were years where they have different formulas and admin costs, what they call it, was being allocated differently, right? So it's very possible, yes. I feel like that's what we need to go back. So my recommendation is we're going to fix the current year and the future because we need to get that to the tax roll by June. We don't have enough resources to fix the current years right now. But in the fall, we're going to come back and look at exactly what we're looking at. And look at the per years and say, okay, if the budget, absent any capital improvements that may have occurred, I doubt it. But it's possible that 5 years ago in District 31, a nice water fountain was built, from the LND. I don't know. I doubt it, but we can look at it. And so, absent that, the budget should be pretty stable over the years, and no, you probably should have not had a deficit. And we'll identify that, make the corrections on the books. Basically, we'll provide to the city a report that says, okay, this is what it should have been, and the city will then have to decide what to do with those funds and how to reallocate them. We're going there, yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Now,
A question that we might have either a surplus or a deficit, but if the money gets in and it's being held in an account, does it make interest? And then plus all this fixing that's going on, and if there's the recommendation to have another staff member, is there any fees being paid that come out of our maintenance that is used towards to the city to pay for such operations? Like right now, my question would be, who will be paying for you? Who's paying for all this corrections?
Yes.
And does it come out of our individual?
Everybody, all 50 of them.
And do we know how much that is or what that is?
Yeah, Mike, this is the guy that you want to see, he will be the one allocating, in fact, he's the one allocating my contract. So he can show you at any time how they're being charged to the various districts. So yes, the way the assessment districts work is they not only fund maintenance, but staff that works on it, consultants that you bring, lawyers, or anything you need, he gets paid from those funds. And it's usually pro rata, usually used to budget as a nice setting, unless there's a district that incurs heavier costs. If, let's say you've got a consultant that was not only doing work in all 58, but he spent 50% of their time in these two districts, then you want to change the formula. But normally you sort of spread it based on their own budgets. So those with large budgets will carry more than consultant, right? The first question you had was interest earnings. There's no interest earnings. Unless you give it to the Colombian cartel, it's not going to happen. And if you find a bank that pays you well, let me know, because I want to put my money there.
And then if the city does do, let's say, hire someone to oversee such fees out there, is the budget probably be conceived of taking out of what we pay as taxes?
Absolutely.
And do we get knowledge and awareness and do you have any input on it?
Yeah, so the annual process, this is what you will see, I mean, you can ask questions at any time, but annually, the city will be taking the engineer's reports I mentioned before. The original report is updated every year, and there's an updated budget in it. And in that budget, you will see the maintenance cost, the contract, you'll see the the consultant time, the staff time, air, water, all the costs related to your district, it's in this report. Normally, you'll see that going to a public hearing, usually around May, because you want to send them in June, so May is a good time to have council approve it. It's public record, you can ask for it, in fact, you can ask for it months ahead of time. I have many cities where there are property owner groups and committees that are organized, and they actually participate in the process. They go to the city sometime in January and are participating in the creation of the budget. Remember, you have all these authorized improvements. You could add even more that are authorized in the act that are not in here. And as long as you don't exceed the assessment authorization, you can pay for that. So as properties, you can organize and say, oh, we want this grass replaced with something really pretty or fancy or what have you. You can do all that. And you can participate in the process and update that budget annually. And as long as you don't go over the maximum assessment, it's totally legal. So yeah, you have total access to it.
Yes, I wanted to know if there was a failure of any kind of service, like sidewalks, trees not being trimmed or roots overgrowing. And I wanted to know where the liability falls. If someone tripped, is it the homeowner, the district, or the city?
That's a question for the city. Todd, are you supposed to hear that? If there's a sidewalk that has been uprooted because of a tree, the roots, and is there a liability there? Whose liability is that? Is it city or property owner?
There's no one simple answer. It depends upon how far the easement goes on the sidewalk, whether through some sort of contract language, you're supposed to maintain it, whether the city's supposed to maintain it, but the liability would be, it's gonna be one of those groups, or maybe shared.
Now, what if the sidewalk or whatever was neglected for several years? Wouldn't that fall on the city or the district and not be the owner because the work hadn't been done or was neglected?
Again, it goes back to whoever is contractually obligated to maintain that would own the liability. So, yeah, it's something we have to look at on a case-by-case basis. In most cases, it's going to be the city/LND if it has a sidewalk. But I think the city attorney could answer more specific, but generally that's going to be used.
I have a question.
We have 1,000-hour cycles that we have years ago. We can't hear them.
Sorry,
Okay, they did come and they did take care of it. So judging by what's happened, I would think that the city would be responsible because when I made the call, they did come and they did take care.
He'll repeat it.
Share the experience.
So our experience is 2 years ago, she called the city regarding the sidewalk, the city came out and repaired the sidewalk, and took care of it.
I'm not sure, like Todd said, various situations are there. We do know that the sidewalks don't have districts that are called out to be maintained by them. There's not enough money to do that. We do get those calls. We own that liability, but what we have to do is put together a sidewalk plan that says, here's how we're going to do that. I mean, the most difficult, it's kind of like, I think the lady talked about the number, you're going to deplete all of our reserves and we have to fix all those sidewalks. Well, the city's in a very similar boat because it's citywide in most cases. So just generally, when it comes to city, and we'll check back on this district/city liability question that you're asking. But I think generally as a city is we have to make a concerted effort to, we're made aware of a sidewalk situation. We need to act upon if someone does trip and fall and they're notified by that, then there is a liability a lot of times that we will have. So that's a lot of, I mean, the liability candidly is you're going to pay the bill, you know, as a taxpayer. So we do try to follow up on those liability concerns because you lose the liability issue, it's money down the drain. We're not great on it because we have a lot of sidewalk concerns out there, but we are working on kind of a plan to say, we have to show the courts is that you have a plan, you're trying to get caught up on this with the best you can with the money that's available. So that's how we do sidewalks. We have been pretty good, trying to catch up a little bit on that, but it's I don't even know the total amounts of sidewalks we need to do, but they're fast and wide. So I do know crews do go out a lot of times when they get a call, look at it. We'll just check on that question when we said district versus a sidewalk that doesn't have an assessment district, that's kind of, we'll get back. We'll let you know. All right, there are better questions. You guys are doing great. Yeah.
It's not just roofs, but I've noticed it's a lot of pitching in the center of the sidewalks. I don't know if it was full of concrete. Can you show me why is that happening now? Not really.
Yeah, I don't even, I'm going to be bold here and say, I don't know. I mean, I am not the construction/engineer guy. So, I don't know, or just talking about pits. I mean, sometimes the sidewalks get holes in them. And,
It's a combination between bad workmanship initially, and then also some was poured, and you talked about the trees. Sometimes when it's poured, the trees will drop items and leak pits from, voids from, pieces of seeds or something on the tree. So it's, we'd have to look at which sidewalk we're talking about to find out what the cause is.
In my area, they're all on the side.
Concrete too is made with a gravel and it has an epoxy around it when it's mixed and it heats over time. As it cures over 80 years, it causes concrete to pop. That's why your garage floor pops or in your house pops. It's a natural process and sometimes you have more than you do in other areas.
And if we could get your contact information, we'll come out and take a look at the sidewalk.
I wanted to mention that if you think of anything later, or I know this is a lot of information to absorb, the city website actually has a page for the assessment district now. So there's actually, if you go to the main city website, you'll find the assessment district, maintenance assessment district page. You go in there, we have several documents already available. I plan to make more documents available to you. Eventually, really what we're going to have in there is every engineer's report. Remember the question about, right here, about the budget and what it covers. We want to have all the original ones in there, all the annual reports, everything that we can provide to you, we'll put it out there for you. We also have community outreach meeting dates. We'll be coming back in February and March and having meetings throughout the city of Oxnard. So you can catch up with me there, any of the meetings, but go to the website and you're just going to read up on these districts, find your district, know where you are, and participate. I think so far I'm really happy with the progress that Michael and the city have been able to do. And we have a really good communication going. I want to keep that up. And it's not a one-year issue. Remember, we want to do this every year. We get involved, look at it, and so that doesn't happen again, right? If we're all informed and looking at it, somebody will look at the numbers and get on it. If you're not on it, who knows when we have it.
Personally, I have a uprooted cement. You can see the root now. It's going towards my main drain now, my home. Who is liability on that one? When I called for 5 years and I haven't got anything yet. But yet you can see the root going directly to the.
I'm exactly 4 years short of my law degree, so I can answer that question.
So I would just say the answer on that is if we can get your contact information, we pretty timely, the woman that spoke earlier, we're pretty good on the responding to complaints. We're not very good at keeping up with general maintenance. It's just the way it is right now. So if we get your contact information, we'll come out, talk to you about it, we'll take a look at it.
I have a question. I live on Mount Mesa, and there was a problem with donors. They came down and cut my trees down. Because they weren't responsible for that part of the grass in between the mailboxes and the sidewalk. So they came out and removed our trees.
The city?
Yes. No, the landscape.
Oh, the contractor?
Yes.
Oh, I thought you want to check on that. I haven't heard of that one.
They cut them down.
We need to get your location so we can follow up on this.
Yes, I have a few questions. I'll start with lady in the far right.
Engineer's report.
Repeat that again?
What's the term of an engineer's report? Is it supposed to be reviewed every 5
Oh,
years?
the term, how long?
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll have an original formation engineering report, which is, when this, you have a many years ago, when your particular development was annexed into, or an assessment issue was requested of that development. As long as nothing major changes, for example, we don't have that scenario here, but imagine if sidewalks was not an original authorized improvement, right? And we were adding that this year. That will require somewhat of a significant revision to the issues report. Otherwise, the report is only updated for the budget annually and the rate. And the rate is actually not updated in terms of creating a new rate, because you're using the same rate that was authorized along with the pre-authorized inflator, and all you're doing is you're bringing it up and showing what the new maximum is versus what your budget says it should be. So usually I show a maximum amount so that everybody knows that at any time the city can go to that number if needed, and then what you're actually going to pay this year based on your budget and your funds available. In your case, you have a negative credit for that, right?
So that's always the go-to.
That is the go-to. So you always want to request the most recent. Right now we are 15-16. That's a report that should have been approved by council sometime in May of last year, right? So because remember, if you're submitting in June, council has to approve it sometime in May or April. Can we have more questions right next to this?
My concern, besides the sidewalk, is the needs that some of us have. June and July is approaching, and it's a mess, because we have to replace our park for our whole house. Our cars are damaged, and every year it's the same thing. Also, like, excuse me, you're getting great, or something's going to be done. It's not only is it damaging our house, but people walk on it, and it ends up at other people's homes.
Now, we are, as I mentioned, the city will be rebidding all of the districts, right? So all the contract that we put out again to bid. With those new contracts, there will be language in there that will be more stringent about the kind of accountability they have to provide on a monthly basis. And also the city is going to make a great effort on tracking these contracts. So I know it has not been happening in the past. All I can say from my standpoint is that I'm having the city do as much as it needs to be done to get to that point where they can trim those trees, take care of the trees, and whatever needs to happen. But really ultimately it's going to come down to city staff implementing that. And so that's what we're trying to do.
My concern is every year we always have to pay, we have replacement, now we have flooring and everything. Every year we're always forking out money for inside of our house, without that staff that, we're everywhere, our house.
Can I just, been in city management business for a while, and we're transitioning and doing this a different way than it's done in the past, and we should be thankful for that because it's not been done well. On one hand. On the other hand, Todd's right now, he's in an interim position, but he's kind of taking over this. So we have to figure out a way, Todd, we'll get back to everybody with this. How do we meet with your neighborhoods? Because the one thing that's a little bit inefficient, to be candid with you, is one person doesn't like this, one doesn't like this. We can gather, you know, the different districts together at some point in time, and I don't know if Michael wants the full responsibility, but it's always better, because I'm going to be honest with you. Some people like a tree, some people don't like a tree. You cut it down when it's a district-wide tree, you know, when it's a tree or a city-wide tree. Some people, they don't want it. Others say, how dare you cut down a tree? So the best thing I can say for you is you have districts, you have areas and neighborhoods. It would be good, and I think that's the intent here when we get a surplus. Is call in the district. What do you want to do with surplus money? And then you get a chance to talk to us about all those needs. We're kind of restarting this again. We're basically restarting it because we really haven't been talking to you to find out. Well, I should say, there's been some follow-up. It's been hit and miss and off and on. We need to get that rolling to where there's a process by which you can go to for a complaint like that, and you know and knows the answer. It's collectively known and knows the answer, or yes, and we deal with it not just in front of your house, but it's district-wide. So a little more patience with us, Todd. I know you walked parts of the neighborhoods or a couple districts, and I think what we'll just say to you is next couple months, 2 to 3 months, we're going to have to re-up this and figure out how we better take on all these different things. I think it would be good. I thought somebody was taking a list here. Just give us your address for tonight, your address and what that issue is, and we'll follow back up on that. But I think ideally, this has been it's just been terrible. And so we've got to do this better. We were talking about making sure we have a liaison to all of you. So You have one person to go to, all the districts do, that's all that person does for you. And for us is manage that and coordinate it, and I think that's been done in the past. So, bear with us a little bit there. Todd's got a new kid on the block here. We want Todd because he gets things done for us. He's proven that in the past, and that's what needs to happen. A little more around here than what has happened. So, you take names for me? So stop by with your name and your address. We'll follow the phone number, contact, email address, something, and we'll follow up. But we're going to need to coordinate this better. This is citywide. I told these guys that started this that they were kind of the hamster to begin this process for all the districts. And they've been caught in, hey, you've been caught in the wheel the longest. So we're finally coming out of that wheel with what it's going to take to stop the dizziness that we've caused and really sit down and work with you here instead of the way it's been. And I gotta give them kudos, as aggravated as they've been with me and the city, they've stuck with you and represented you very well. And this is our start, this is our restart, and we're gonna do it differently. So make sure you give it to them now, but Todd, we're gonna have to just figure out a way to get different districts together, especially when you got surpluses. Unless Michael and the team you're all willing to give them the authority, even though they might not be in your district, we'll have to figure that out.
And before we take them
Somebody's may have been on the street also, because you've gotten petitions from certain streets that everybody on that street wants this action taken.
Yeah.
So-
And also, if I could get back to the trees, in response to that, your LMPs are within different general plan areas of the city and ordinance areas. So I've done this with Michael and Mr. Molina, as we looked at the requirements, the specific requirements for your area based upon the size of your parkland. So there was 4 trees that are available in Mr. Molina's area, but that turns out that they have similar problems as the ones you have there. So we talked about that today, and I need to vet that out with planning to see if there's some other alternatives that we can use some route considerations or something. Because what we don't want to do is come in and replace a tree, you jump up and down, hooray, and you're tracking a different color of stuff in your house.
Are you planning on replacing all the trees, or just the problem trees, or are all the trees problem trees? Because I know on Rosalinda, those trees are horrendous. Those are the ones with the dropping of the sap, and the arbor, flowers that you're ready to have. So that's a question. Is every street going to have trees replaced, or is it just a crop?
Best answer to that is we need to prioritize any that are dangerous or diseased. And then anything beyond that, you're going to have to tell us in your individual district whether you want them replaced, or if you have them, or so it's kind of a case by case.
Because you aren't supposed to cut any people off of that. People have to, and I don't blame them. We have done it, but I think we have.
I got
So there's just a couple, you and then we'll go over here. So 1, 2, go ahead.
Okay, I'm the secretary for West Village, and I'd like to know if this report is going to be available on the city website, and if we can have a copy of it sent to next door.
Is this a copy of this draft going to be on the city website? Can they get a copy? Why, they don't know.
It's not there yet. We're gonna put it there. As soon as
So
I get it, can send it.
It'll be up on the maintenance landscape district section of the city website?
Correct.
And then can we get a copy of it sent to our nextdoor.com for our area?
Michael, can you send me that, how I do that? I don't know how to send it to them.
If you send it to me, I'll post
Okay,
it.
so I'll send that, I'll publish it there, and we'll have the city publish it on the website. To get it on the website, I know it goes to their IT staff. Tiffany's with me, so we're probably not gonna be able to email it until Friday to the city. We're traveling, but once they have it, they should be published shortly after that.
Okay, because I know there are people who couldn't come tonight who will be interested to see this,
No, thank you.
the results, and they'll want to know who to contact for their particular street or district.
Ray, did you have a
Yeah,
timeline?
no, I was just gonna say, because there's There's 3 audits that MBS has completed. One of them is the boundary audit to verify that we have the appropriate boundaries, the levy audit, and then the one he's referring to right now is the budget audit. And all 3 of those we are taking to council. You are actually the first to actually start seeing the findings before the council, so don't tell them. But it's because Michael Gleason, we promised him that we would start the audits and complete them for your district first. And so we're presenting those to you, but we are taking them to council on March 29th. And right after we present it to council, we can then definitely release them, because right now they're in draft form and we're trying to finalize them. So I didn't want to commit to something before I give it to the council. So is that okay with you all?
Yeah, that's fine, we just want to see them show up somewhere where other people can see them after.
We're gonna go to INCO, but we also have to go to neighborhood outreaches throughout the community, and including those where he's gonna go, but I don't have to go, where it's negative. I came tonight because you're plus. And look at all the questions you have. Can you imagine on the other side? And it's not, I chuckle only because we made it through to this point. The past is a sad story, but I'm confident, and we're going to work darn hard that this never occurs in my council or my conference rooms again, where the complete dissatisfaction and frustration of the neighborhood group is clearly shown to me as your city manager. I have a responsibility to be accountable to you, and we failed that. We lost that trust, and we got to earn it back. So I chuckle because it feels good to be back here to say we have made some headway finally, and now we still have to do a lot when it comes to what your landscape maintenance looks like, what improvements we do, how we manage that. But from a cost perspective, we know that, I mean, there was a district of $100 and some thousand over assessed. I mean, that's just wrong. So that's a good start. I'm happy about that. These are slides. These aren't the full report. So we'll actually be posting all the full reports when we go to council, but we'll post these slides up so you can get a copy of what we're showing you tonight. No other questions? Thank you. Oh, there are. Fire away. No,
This is a quick simple one. So it's not like a general West Village is going to end up, most of the districts anyway, will end up with a surplus, and in some cases, they'll be substantial. You've got other districts in Oxnard that haven't been paying enough, and they'll have a deficit. Is the money there to cover expenses that might come from the surplus to get things fixed, or is the city, I guess I'm asking, is the money in the bank, or is it just on paper?
Are you asking the surpluses that we're showing you up here, or the surpluses that are currently there? Is the money there in the districts?
Is the money there?
The money's there in the districts that are in surplus.
Got it.
So the ones that are not in surplus, that are running negative deficits, are going to have to be decisions made about levels of maintenance moving forward, or the same conversation about you talking about what you want to do with your surplus. They're going to have to decide they want to add things in that aren't there, or raise that assessment. City can't just say, we're going to raise your assessment. You know, that requires, they have to vote on that to do that. So that's those will be the tough discussions there. And you know, there's going to be real difficult discussions from the city council level, from communities that say, wait a minute, we didn't do this, and you're not going to maintain, you're going to let us go down and deteriorate to this level, and the council will have to make some tough decisions, because otherwise it's your general fund money that's going to subsidize that down the road. Yeah, it's just, I'm happy to pleased that we're cleaning some of this up piece by piece. On the other hand, it's a struggle to sit in rooms with people that say, where is this, why is that, and so forth. They don't have good answers. So we'll keep taking it one piece at a time.
Thank you.
I have a question for the consultant. I'm sorry, what was your name again? Pablo. Is it possible?
Puerto Rican. Last name with the name of Pablo.
You've seen some of the issues where the bills did not show up, or invoices for medicine and all that. Is it possible
that some of the districts have been billed incorrectly for water, power, landscaping. Much like a bank may take your payment but apply it to the wrong account.
Yes.
And so those districts may not really be in arrears, they may not really have a depletion or a surplus, but the billing has been incorrect. And so to correct that, you may have to take from one district who wasn't billed correctly and redistribute.
Okay, so that's a two-part question, okay? In this audit, we have already shifted some of those meters and accounts that we found were being correctly to build the new preliminary budget that you saw here. So from a current year standpoint, we're making those assumptions and moving it to where it belongs, and that will indeed shift what a district's potential surplus or deficit will be in the future based on that. In the fall, once we have these budgets figured out, now we can then sit and look back and look at all the years all the way to as far as we want to go and as far as we have records actually, right? To look and say, okay, if we absent any major events, again, you can look at a given year and say, well, in that year, those expenses were legitimate because this one big thing happened, right? But absent that, you should have a pretty steady budget and you should be able to say, okay, so that means something was logged incorrectly. And we can see that pattern. We actually already see it. Tiffany has been requesting additional information for some particular districts that we already see out of whack, right? It doesn't make sense to us when we look back. At the end of the day, yes, we're going to have to create a spreadsheet that adjusts and says, oh boy, that meter, which is a $16,000 meter, for 20 years have been charged to this one district, and that district really should have a meter that is a $1,000 meter a year, that's a $15,000 overcharge. 20 years. We'll give that amount to the cities to show this should be moved in the fund balances. You could go from a deficit to a plus, right? And the same could happen to a district with surplus funds to go into the negative. At this point, I can't tell you how much that's going to be. I know there is some of that, yes. And we will find it, we will provide it to the city, and then the city will have to internally make adjustments or make a decision already. And I think that's future, goes back. There's enough here to keep
It
us
makes
busy.
sense that you can do that after you get a baseline.
There you go.
Then you can go back and look at what may have happened in the past.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it just seems like, why would one district have spent so much of their money and another district none at all?
That's correct. Any more questions?
It's good to see you all again. Better news than last time. We'll continue. We'll be back. Keep talking. So thank you for patience. There's been a lot of patience from this group. We'll keep working with you. Thank you.
You know,